Well, let's go to the foyer of the House of Commons now and speak to three MPs about the matter. Joining us now are Darrell Samson, Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Rural Economic Development, Melissa Lantsman, the Deputy Leader of the Conservative Party, and Peter Julian, the NDP House Leader. Hello to the three of you.
Hi, how are you, Peter? Michael?
I'm good. Listen, Mr. Samson, I'm going to start with you because I do want to begin with your reaction to Premier Moe's accusation here that the exemption that your government is making for home oil heating is creating two classes of taxpayers because it mainly benefits Atlantic Canadians and ignores the affordability challenges faced by the people in his province.
First of all, let me start off by saying I'm a member of Parliament for Atlantic Canada, and I'm here to defend Atlantic Canadians, and that's what I do every day on behalf of Atlantic Canadians. But what he needs to understand is that he needs to come to the table and join the federal government so that we can put programs in each province right across the country to support Canadians. This is a very important issue. We have a package of 4 programs. His rural communities right across the province of Saskatchewan, right across Canada, is benefiting from those programs and will benefit from those programs as well. So it's not one area over the other, but I'm a defender, of course, of Atlantic Canada. I keep fighting for Atlantic Canadians. Atlantic Canadians are pressing on affordability. Of course, there is many more Atlantic Canadians per ratio that's still on oil, and we need to bring that transition. This is going to accelerate the process to cleaner energy, which is extremely important. And as far as rural communities, our percentage is much higher than anywhere else across the country. So this program, yes, there's some pieces for Atlantic Canadians, but if they come to the table, the provinces, they can also join in and be part of the solution. And that's the type of approach that our government is taking. And when I talk to my citizens in my riding, they tell me how difficult it is. They're telling me how we need to be there to support them. We've been there through COVID, and we've been there today, and we'll be there tomorrow to support all Canadians.
Okay, Ms. Lantsman, what do you say to that? Because yes, you hear from the governing Liberals that this is meant to be a national program. There's also the rural rebate. What's your reaction to that? Because clearly Scott Moe is willing to withhold the collection and the distribution of the carbon tax here.
Mr. Moe's accusation is not an accusation. It's just a fact. And if this is a national program, well, it's some national program because it doesn't include 97% of Canadians. The Minister of Rural Economic Development, Goody Hutchins, she's from Newfoundland. She was out this weekend saying, if you want to get on board, you gotta vote Liberal. So of course this is creating two classes of taxpayers. It's creating two classes. It's an admission of failure that the carbon tax, A, costs you money, B, is ineffective, and 3, why not get rid of it for all Canadians? That's exactly what a common-sense Conservative government would do. So the choice is pretty easy here. Okay,
Mr. Julian, what do you make of this home heating oil carve-out and the rural rebate? Is it creating two classes of Canadian taxpayers?
Well, the interesting thing from Ms. Lantsman's comments is a year ago the NDP brought forward an amendment to do just that, to take the GST off home heating quite across the country. Conservatives blocked it. Liberals didn't support it. So a year later, now they seem to be moving to where the NDP was and Jagmeet Singh was a year ago, because we've seen how people are struggling to make ends meet. We've seen how people are struggling to keep a roof over their head. And at the same time, we've seen, and this happened under the Harper government, Mr. Poilievre was part of it, the Harper handouts of billions and billions of dollars to oil and gas CEOs, rather than making the investments in clean energy, which is so critical to actually fighting back against climate change.
Are you against this home heating oil exemption then?
We proposed this a year ago, and Conservatives and Liberals wouldn't accept it. And a year later now, both the Liberals and Conservatives seem to be moving in the direction of the NDP. Why didn't they do it a year ago?
Mm-hmm. You know, Mr. Samson, I'll bring you in here again because, you know, Ms. Lantsman referenced the fact that the argument is now being made that this exemption that your government is putting forward proves that your carbon tax is not revenue neutral, because if the carbon tax rebate actually gave equal or more of what Canadians paid out, you wouldn't be forced to make this concession in the first place.
Well, it makes me laugh when I hear Conservatives. They don't believe that climate change is here, that it's real. And in Atlantic Canada, we've seen the challenges with the hurricanes and the flooding, and we need to react, and the Atlantic Canadians understand that. But the Conservative, they had a chance. Only 2 weeks ago, C49 was on the table, where we could have made some changes to bring in offshore wind, which would be the first one in Canada. This would change to clean energy. Tomorrow morning, it's trillions of dollars of investment there, good paying jobs for Atlantic Canadians and all Canadians, and they voted against it. So we can talk, but the action is What are you going to do to help Canadians? And this is what we're doing with this program.
But I think the arguments being made here, Mr. Samson, despite what you're saying about wind energy, is that at the end of the day, what you're doing proves that your carbon tax is not revenue neutral for Canadians and it's costing them money.
Absolutely not. There's money rebates for everyone as well, but this is another change that's allowing us to move forward in another way. So if we're challenged with the heating oil, that it's available, like I said, the program, if the provinces want to come on board, like the Atlantic Canadian provinces, and put some money on the table so that we can make that transition, it's about accelerating the transition. That's the key that we have here, and this is the program that will do it, and we're doing it for all Canadians if they come to the table. But they haven't, some provinces haven't been
what do you make of that? What do you make of that, Ms. Lantsman? Because they are making this argument that at the end of the day, this is about getting more people off of home heating oil, which is a carbon-heavy source of heat.
Look, we've got Mr. Julian here sitting pretending that he hasn't voted for every single carbon tax increase in this country that has raised the price of gas, groceries, home heating, and everything you buy. And then you've got Mr. Samson here, who pretends that this is a revenue neutral tax that the Prime Minister came out into this very lobby on a Thursday afternoon when his poll numbers are in the gutter to make changes to because Atlantic Canadians need a break, because they're paying, and they will eventually pay, the quadruple amount of carbon tax because both of these parties together in a coalition decide to vote to increase it. So there is one party that is going to
and the polling numbers, the Conservatives are seeing an opportunity.
Okay. Can we stop?
So
Finish very quickly, Melissa.
I gave them a chance to speak. I hope they'll afford me that same opportunity. There is one party that is going to take the carbon tax off for every single Canadian. That's the Conservative Party, and it's not these two coalition parties.
Okay, Mr. Julian.
Well, I mean, the Conservatives a year ago blocked the NDP's motion to take the GST off home heating fuel. So that the reality is we take no lessons from the Conservatives. We also know that over the 9 dismal years of the Harper government, they poured billions of dollars into handouts for the oil and gas CEOs and quite frankly did absolutely nothing to fight back against climate change. We're living that now in British Columbia with the atmospheric rivers, with the heat dome that killed 600 people in my riding and in the area around. Conservatives were a disaster for the environment and a disaster for people's pocketbooks. And now the Liberals are improvising. I think from one day to the next, the fact is ensuring a transition means investing in clean energy. The reality of doing what the NDP asked for a year ago isn't going to bring about the transition and the clean energy jobs that we want to see. And so the incoherence of this Liberal government and the contradiction and hypocrisy of the Conservatives, I think, should lead Canadians to the conclusion that only the NDP can actually make sure that people can put food on the table, keep a roof over their head, and we can combat climate change in an effective way.
Okay, listen, I appreciate you guys bringing up each other's past voting records, but I'm going to go down the road, quickly running out of time here. But now that we have this exemption from the federal government on its own carbon tax, will the Liberals be forced to make more concessions in order to get Canadians on side and not as offended as some are right now? Mr. Samson, 40 seconds to you.
Again, I can't repeat this again more often than I've just said. They need to come to the table. The provinces need to come to the table and work with the federal government so that we can help all Canadians about affordability. But let's not forget, this is a federation. This government is focused on how can we help some provinces
that might be forced to make more concessions? But will you be forced to make more concessions as a result of this one concession you're making on home oil heating?
The package is for all Canadians. If they come to the table, there's no concession. They'll get the programs and they'll move forward. If they want to help,
it benefits Atlantic Canadians more than anybody else does.
Well, Atlantic Canadians are faced with a greater challenge right now. As I said earlier, they have a higher percentage of rural communities, which is a big number, a higher percentage of seniors. The challenges are there. So as we're trying to move to the transition, we need to help them. And we're helping them, but the program is there for Canadians.
Okay.
You've got to come to the table and negotiate.
Okay, Ms. Lantsman, do you think the Trudeau Liberals are going to have to make more concessions here?
This is incoherent nonsense. It's an admission of failure. It's an admission that the Prime Minister put his political fortunes above those of 97% of Canadians. So we look forward to a government one day that will actually axe the tax for every single Canadian, like these guys are hopefully going to be forced to do.
Okay, Mr. Julian.
The cost of doing doing nothing is
Julian,
greater.
Mr. Julian.
Well, it's certainly not going to be a Conservative government. We saw a year ago how they blocked the NDP attempt to take the GST off home heating fuel, but the reality is this announcement has been incoherent and confusing, and I think it's absolutely important that this government now makes it clear who benefits from this particular initiative. They seem to be improvising. What they need to do is follow NDP direction. The NDP direction was a year ago. Liberals are basically trying to catch up, and they should have followed what we put forward a year ago when they had the chance.
Okay, well, that's the time we have for this evening. Thank you to the three of you for joining us. Darrell Samson, Melissa Lantsman, Peter Julian, always appreciate the time.
Thank you.